When my sister walked out of my mother's bedroom with a velvet pouch of jewelry tucked under her arm, I took the only thing she said was worthless: the empty jewelry box. It was a square walnut box with a cracked brass lock, a faded red lining, and a tiny drawer at the bottom that never opened right. My mother kept it on her dresser for as long as I could remember, between a bottle of lavender lotion and an old photograph of my father standing beside a blue pickup truck. My sister, Claire, had always loved the shine of things. I had always noticed the quiet things. So when she said, "There's nothing left in that old box, Nora. You can have it if you're feeling sentimental," I simply nodded, held it against my coat, and carried it home like a teacher carrying a stack of ungraded papers. That night, while rain tapped against my kitchen window, I found the false bottom. Inside was a yellowed envelope, 3 bank receipts, and a will that should not have existed. My mother had died believing her estate was simple. My sister had acted like there was nothing to discuss. And the lawyer who handled the probate had looked me in the eye and told me there were no surprises. But there, inside that old jewelry box, was a signature, a date, and the name of a trust worth more than either of us had ever imagined. The strangest part was not the money. The strangest part was that the will had my sister's name crossed out. Good day, dear listeners. It's Nora again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please subscribe to my channel and like this video, and also let me know in the comments which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I was 47 when my mother died. I lived in a modest brick duplex in Dayton, Ohio, taught 11th grade American history at a public high school, and believed most problems could be solved with patience, documentation, and time. Teaching does that to you. After enough years in a classroom, you learn that the loudest student is not always the one who understands the most, and the quietest one is not always innocent. You learn to watch patterns. Who changes seats when a test is coming? Who borrows a pencil every Monday because the weekend at home was chaotic? Who smiles while lying, and who cries when telling the truth? My mother used to say I noticed too much. You could find a secret in an empty room, she once told me. I laughed at the time. I did not know she had left one for me. My mother, Evelyn, was not a wealthy woman in any obvious way. She worked for 31 years as a records clerk at a county hospital. She clipped coupons, reused gift bags, and kept her thermostat low enough in winter that you needed socks in the hallway. Her house was paid off, but small. Her car was 12 years old. Her jewelry was mostly costume pieces, though she had a few real things from my grandmother: a gold locket, pearl earrings, a thin diamond bracelet she wore only to weddings and funerals. My sister Claire was 3 years older than me, and very different. She lived in Columbus, worked in real estate development, and had the polished calm of someone who knew exactly how to make people feel slightly underdressed. She never yelled. She never slammed doors. She wounded with concern. "Nora, I just worry you're too emotional to handle these things," she would say. Or, "Mum always needed someone practical. You were wonderful company for her, but paperwork isn't really your world." That last part always amused me, because my entire profession was paperwork. Lesson plans, attendance logs, parent emails, disciplinary records, grading rubrics, curriculum maps. Teachers are not dreamy people standing in front of chalkboards all day. We are archivists of human behavior. Still, after Mum's death, I let Claire take the lead. Part of it was grief, part of it was exhaustion. My mother's decline had been slow and private. She had heart failure, then kidney trouble, then a winter of hospital visits that blurred into one long hallway, smelling of antiseptic and vending machine coffee. I sat with her after work, graded essays in vinyl chairs, and listened to monitors beep while she slept. Claire visited when she could. That was how she phrased it, when she could. The last week of Mum's life, Claire arrived wearing a camel coat and carrying a leather folder. She kissed Mum's forehead, arranged the blanket, then stepped into the hallway to take calls. I remember seeing her through the small rectangular window in the hospital room door, her face still and professional, one hand pressed to her ear. I assumed she was working. I assumed many things then. At the funeral, Claire moved through the room like a hostess at an expensive event. She thanked people, accepted casseroles, spoke to the pastor, and gently guided me away when I stood too long beside the casket. You need air, she whispered. I did need air, but I also needed my mother back, and no one could give me that. After the burial, we gathered at Mum's house. Neighbours brought coffee, cousins sat in folding chairs. Someone opened the blinds, and afternoon light fell across the carpet in pale strips. Everything looked painfully ordinary. Her slippers still sat beside the recliner. Her reading glasses rested on a crossword puzzle. A half-used roll of peppermint candies was in the candy dish. Death is strange that way. It empties a person from a house, but leaves behind all their evidence. By evening, the relatives had gone. Claire and I stood in Mum's bedroom, facing the dresser. She opened the top drawer without asking. I watched her lift the velvet pouch from the jewelry box. It made a soft, whispering sound against the wood. I'll take care of the valuables, she said. I was too tired to argue. Shouldn't we make a list? I asked. She gave me a patient smile. There's no need to turn this into an inventory exercise. It's just Mum's jewelry. It still belongs to the estate. Her expression changed, but only by a degree, a curtain lowering behind her eyes. Nora, she said softly, please don't make this ugly. Those words stayed with me, not because they were cruel, but because they were prepared. In my classroom, when a student answers a question before I finish asking it, I pay attention. It usually means they are not responding to the moment. They are responding to something they already planned for. Claire had come ready for resistance. I did not know why. At first, the warning signs were small enough to explain away. A week after the funeral, Claire called and said she had spoken to an attorney named Russell Vance, who had helped Mum update some documents years earlier. He says everything is straightforward, she told me. The house will be sold, debts settled, and whatever remains divided. Did Mum have a will? I asked. A basic one, Claire said. Nothing unusual. Can I see it? There was a pause. Not long, just long enough. Of course, she said. I'll send it when Russell gives me the scanned copy. She did not send it. The next red flag came from a bank envelope. I stopped by Mum's house one Saturday to sort pantry items for donation. Claire had already been there. The kitchen trash held shredded papers, but one torn corner had missed the bag and landed near the baseboard. I picked it up without thinking. It showed the top of a bank statement. Not Mum's regular bank. This one had the logo of a private trust company in Cincinnati. There were only 3 visible words: Evergreen Fiduciary Services. I stood there with the paper corner in my hand, hearing the refrigerator hum. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a retirement account. Maybe old paperwork from her hospital job. Maybe something Claire had brought. Then I noticed the mail basket was gone. Mum always kept a woven basket on the counter for bills, coupons, church newsletters, and handwritten notes. It was one of those household objects so ordinary that you don't see it until it disappears. When I asked Claire about it, she said, I threw away the junk mail. You're welcome. Was there anything important? Nora, if there had been anything important, I would have kept it. Again, the gentle tone. Again, the polished patience. I began taking notes. Not because I knew there was a mystery, because I teach teenagers, and I know memory is unreliable when emotions are high. I kept a yellow legal pad on my kitchen table and wrote down dates, conversations, exact phrases. At first I felt foolish. Then I felt steadier. A record is a railing when grief makes the stairs feel steep. 3 weeks after the funeral, I received a call from Russell Vance's office. His assistant said the probate documents were ready for my signature. I thought I'd be reviewing them first, I said. Oh, she replied, sounding surprised. Ms. Whitaker indicated you had already agreed. Whitaker was Claire's married name. No, I said. I haven't seen anything. There was paper shuffling on the other end. Then the assistant's voice became careful. I'll make a note that you requested copies. Requested copies. The phrase bothered me, as if I were asking for a favor instead of a legal document involving my own mother. That evening, Claire called. Her voice was warm. Too warm. I heard you contacted Russell's office. They contacted me. Well, yes, but Nora, you have to be careful not to slow things down. Probate can become expensive if people start second-guessing every form. I asked to see the documents. You'll see them. When? She sighed, the kind of sigh meant to make me feel childish. You know, Mum worried about this. Worried about what? That you'd have trouble letting go. There it was, the family version of cross-examination, not answering the question, but questioning the person who asked it. I looked down at my legal pad and wrote exactly what she had said. Mum worried you'd have trouble letting go. Then I asked, Claire, why did Mum have paperwork from Evergreen Fiduciary Services? Silence. This time, the pause was longer. I don't know what you mean, she said. I found part of a statement. Nora, Mum received all kinds of junk mail. Elderly people get targeted constantly. It didn't look like junk mail. I'm telling you, it was probably nothing. Probably? Her voice cooled. I have a meeting in 8 minutes. Can we not spiral tonight? After she hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. The house was quiet except for the furnace clicking on. Outside, a neighbor's porch light flickered. I stared at the words Evergreen Fiduciary Services until they stopped looking like words and started looking like a door. The discovery came because of a broken hinge. A month after Mum's funeral, Claire told me she had scheduled an estate sale company to evaluate the house contents. She said if there was anything sentimental I wanted, I should remove it before they came. That sentence hurt more than I expected. Anything sentimental. As if a life could be divided into useful and sentimental piles. I went to Mum's house after school on a Thursday. It was late October, that grey Ohio kind of evening when the sky looks like wet paper. I let myself in with my old key and stood in the entryway, smelling dust, lemon cleaner, and the faint powdery scent of my mother's perfume. I did not take much. Her recipe box. A quilt she kept folded at the foot of her bed. The ceramic bird I made in 7th grade, that she somehow still displayed on her bookshelf. And the empty jewelry box Claire had dismissed. It sat on the dresser, lid open, red lining exposed like a small wound. I almost left it there. Then I noticed one of the brass hinges was loose. The lid leaned slightly to one side. My mother hated broken things. She would have had me tighten it months ago if she had noticed. I closed the lid and carried the box to my car. At home, I made tea and placed the box on my kitchen table. Rain had started, thin and steady. My school bag sat on one chair, full of essays about the Constitution that needed grading. I remember thinking I would fix the hinge, put the box on a shelf, and return to my normal life. Normal life is often the last place we stand before the floor opens. I found a small screwdriver in the junk drawer and turned the box over. The bottom was covered in black felt, worn smooth at the corners. One edge had lifted slightly. I pressed it and felt something hard beneath. At first, I thought it was a warped panel. Then I saw the seam. My breath slowed. I slid the screwdriver carefully under the felt and lifted. The adhesive came loose with a dry tearing sound. Beneath it was a thin wooden panel with a tiny brass pull, no bigger than a shirt button. It had been painted dark to blend with the wood grain. My hands were steady, but my heart was not. I pulled. The false bottom resisted, then opened. Inside was an envelope sealed with tape yellowed by age. On the front, in my mother's handwriting, were 4 words. Nora, when I'm gone. I sat back so suddenly my chair scraped the floor. For a moment, I did not touch it. I looked at my mother's handwriting, the way you look at a photograph of someone you loved before they became sick. The letters were firm, slightly slanted, unmistakably hers. I opened the envelope with a butter knife. Inside was a notarized will, dated 6 years earlier, a letter, 3 bank receipts, and a small key taped to an index card. The key was labeled Safe Deposit Box 1147, Riverbend Mutual. The will named me as executor, not Claire. It stated that Mum's house was to be placed in a trust for my benefit until retirement, then sold or donated at my discretion. It mentioned an account at Evergreen Fiduciary Services. It mentioned personal property, including jewelry, to be inventoried before distribution. And then came the paragraph that made the room seem to tilt. I intentionally make no distribution to my daughter Claire Whitaker from the Evergreen Trust due to documented undue influence, unauthorized withdrawals, and attempts to pressure me into revising my estate plan. I read that sentence 5 times. Documented undue influence. Unauthorized withdrawals. Attempts to pressure me. My mother had known, and she had hidden the proof in a jewelry box Claire emptied with her own hands. For several minutes, I heard nothing but rain and my own breathing. Then my phone lit up. A text from Claire. "Did you take the jewelry box?" I stared at the screen until it went dark. That was when fear entered the room. Not panic, not hysteria, a cold, careful fear that sat across from me like a second person at the kitchen table. I did not answer her. Instead, I photographed every page. I placed the documents in a folder. Then I took a video of the jewelry box, the false bottom, the envelope, the key, the will, the letter, everything exactly as I had found it. Teaching taught me that evidence without context can be twisted. So I narrated the video in a calm voice, naming the date, time, and location. I sounded like a stranger to myself. Then I read my mother's letter. "My dear Nora, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and I am sorry I did not tell you while I was alive. I wanted to protect you from the burden, but silence became its own burden. There are things your sister has done that I did not want to believe at first. I kept records. I spoke to an attorney outside of Russell's office. I opened a safe deposit box. I made copies. Trust paper, bank paper, hospital paper, all the paper that proves what people deny. Do not confront Claire alone. Do not sign anything from Russell Vance without independent counsel. Take this key to Riverbend Mutual and ask for the box under my full name. The passphrase is, 'The lilacs bloom late.' I love both my daughters, but love is not blindness. You were always the one who listened before speaking. Please listen now. Mum." I lowered the letter and pressed my hand over my mouth. There are forms of grief that arrive late. The first grief was losing my mother. The second was realizing she had spent her final years afraid. I sat there until the tea went cold. Then I stood, locked my door, and drew the curtains. It sounds dramatic now, but in that moment, ordinary things became warnings. Headlights passing my window, a car slowing near the curb, the buzz of my phone. Claire called 3 times, then Russell Vance called once. I did not answer. At 9:30, Claire sent another text. "Nora, this is getting uncomfortable. I need that box back. Mum promised I could handle her personal items." I wrote it down. At 10:15, another message came. "Please don't force me to involve Russell. You're grieving and not thinking clearly." I wrote that down too. Fear is strange. It does not always make you small. Sometimes it makes the world sharper. The kitchen table, the legal pad, the coffee cup, the old box with its secret belly. Everything seemed outlined. I was not brave. I was careful. That night, I did not sleep in my bedroom. I sat on the living room couch with the folder beside me and my phone plugged in. I kept replaying my mother's sentence. Love is not blindness. By morning, I had made my first quiet decision. I would not accuse anyone. I would not threaten anyone. I would not sign anything, and I would not let Claire know what I had found until someone who understood the law was sitting beside me. The next morning, I called in sick to school for the first time in 2 years. Then I called the only attorney I trusted, though I had never needed her professionally. Her name was Marisol Grant. She was the mother of a former student of mine, a careful woman with silver glasses and a reputation for making powerful men regret underestimating her. When I reached her office, I said, "I think my mother hid a will from the lawyer handling her estate." There was a pause. Then Marisol said, "Do you have the document?" "Yes." "Do you have reason to believe someone may try to destroy or challenge it?" I looked at Claire's texts. "Yes. Make copies. Do not email them to anyone yet. Come to my office at noon. Bring the original in a folder, not loose." "And Nora?" "Yes?" "Do not tell your sister you're coming." Marisol's office was above a bakery downtown. The stairwell smelled like cinnamon and printer toner. I remember that because my senses seemed to record everything that day, as if my body understood my life had become testimony. She read the will without speaking, then she read my mother's letter, then she examined the key, the receipts, and the photographs on my phone. When she finally looked up, her face was calm, but her eyes were alert. This is serious, she said. Is it real? It appears properly executed, but we'll verify. The bigger issue is that another attorney may have submitted or prepared estate documents inconsistent with this will. Russell Vance. I know of him. The way she said it told me more than the words. Is he bad? Lawyers are rarely useful when described as good or bad, she said. The better question is whether he had a conflict of interest. I thought of Claire's leather folder at the hospital. What do I do now? You do nothing alone, Marisol said. We create a record. We notify the probate court that a later will has been found. We request a hold on any estate sale, transfer, or distribution. We preserve the jewelry issue. Then we go to the bank. She took the jewelry. Did she document it? No. Then we document that too. I felt embarrassed. I don't care about the jewelry. I believe you, Marisol said. But people who take small things without records sometimes take large things with paperwork. That sentence became a lesson plan in my mind. Objective: understand how patterns reveal intent. Evidence: jewelry, missing mail basket, delayed will, pressure texts. Conclusion: do not ignore the small theft just because the larger theft is more frightening. Marisol made copies. She placed the original will in a protective sleeve and had me sign a statement describing how and where I found it. She asked me to forward Claire's texts to a secure address. Then she gave me one instruction I followed like homework. From now on, she said, write down every contact, time, date, method, exact words. If they call, let it go to voicemail. If they visit, do not open the door unless someone is with you. Before I left, she asked, do you know the value of the Evergreen Trust? I shook my head. My mother lived on coupons. That does not answer my question. No, I said. I don't know. Marisol tapped one of the receipts. Then we find out. Riverbend Mutual Bank sat on a corner near the old courthouse, a stone building with brass doors and green-shaded lamps over the teller windows. I had driven past it for years without noticing it. That morning it seemed to notice me first. Marisol came with me. At the safe deposit desk, I gave the banker my mother's name, the key, and the passphrase. The woman behind the desk was in her 60s, with careful hair and a navy cardigan. Her expression did not change at the phrase, the lilacs bloom late, but she stood a little straighter. Please wait here, she said. She disappeared into a back office. 5 minutes passed. 10. I looked at Marisol. Is this normal? Sometimes, she said. The banker returned with a branch manager. Ms. Hale, he said to me, using my unmarried last name. We'll need to verify some documents before granting access. Your mother placed specific instructions on the box. What instructions? He glanced at Marisol. She indicated that access after death should be granted only to Nora Hale or her legal representative upon presentation of a death certificate and valid identification. My mother had planned this. Not vaguely, not emotionally. Precisely. We opened the box in a small private room with a table, 2 chairs, and a clock that ticked louder than it needed to. The banker placed the long metal container in front of me and left. Inside were 3 folders, a flash drive, an old check register, and a photograph of my mother standing beside a lilac bush in spring. The first folder was labelled Evergreen. The second was labelled Claire. The third was labelled Russell. I remember whispering, "Oh, Mum." Marisol did not touch anything at first. She asked me to photograph the contents exactly as they appeared. Then, wearing gloves she took from her briefcase, she opened the Evergreen folder. The first page was a trust statement. The value was $1,842,611.73. I stared at the number. Not because I wanted it, because it made no sense. My mother had reused aluminum foil. Where did this come from? I asked. Marisol turned the page. The answer was not lottery money, not secret stocks, not some dramatic hidden fortune from a stranger. It was quieter and, somehow, more painful. My grandfather had owned farmland outside Dayton. Decades earlier, part of it had been sold for commercial development. My mother's share had been placed in trust after my father died, managed privately because she did not want family conflict. She lived off her pension and social security, letting the trust grow. She had not been poor. She had chosen simplicity. The next documents showed withdrawals, large ones, $40,000, $65,000, $110,000. Each had notations: home modification, medical assistance, family emergency, investment bridge. Some had Claire's signature as authorized helper. Some had Russell Vance's letterhead attached. My stomach tightened. Marisol opened the Claire folder. Inside were copies of emails, notes written in my mother's hand, a timeline, a letter from a different attorney advising Mum to revoke a power of attorney she had given Claire temporarily after a hospital stay. Then came the page that made Marisol stop. It was a copy of a durable power of attorney naming Claire. Across the top, in my mother's handwriting, were the words, "I did not sign this version." Marisol's voice was low. "We need a forensic document examiner." The room felt smaller. I thought we had found a hidden will. But my mother had left a classroom full of evidence, and each folder was a lesson more disturbing than the last. When I got home that evening, Claire's car was parked in front of my duplex. She stood on my porch in a cream coat, holding 2 coffees. For 1 second, I saw us as children, Claire at 11, me at 8, sharing a bedroom, whispering after lights out, making tents from blankets. I wanted that memory to be stronger than the woman on my porch. It was not. She smiled when I walked up. "I thought we should talk like adults." I did not climb the steps. "I'm tired, Claire." "I know, that's why I'm worried." There it was again. Worried. She held out one of the coffees. Peace offering. "No, thank you." Her smile thinned. "Are you really going to make me stand outside?" "Yes." For the first time, irritation slipped through. "Nora, this is ridiculous. Please leave." She looked past me toward the street, as if checking whether neighbors could hear. "Russell says you've been making calls." "I have an attorney now." Her eyes fixed on mine. That was the moment she knew. Not what I had, maybe, but that I had stopped being manageable. "Nora," she said gently, "whatever you think you found, you need to understand something." Mum was confused near the end. She wrote things down that weren't accurate. She accused people. She forgot conversations. She was still correcting my grammar in text messages 2 weeks before she died. Lucid moments don't mean legal capacity. It was such a prepared phrase. Legal capacity. Not grief. Not concern. Strategy. I said nothing. Claire lowered her voice. "You have a good life. Your school, your students, your little house. Don't let some old papers turn you into someone bitter." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of how neatly she placed me in a box. The little sister, the school teacher, the sentimental one, the woman who would rather be liked than be difficult. "Good night, Claire." She stepped closer. "There are things you don't understand. I'm learning." Her face changed then. Just for a second, the mask did not fall, it cracked. "You always thought being quiet made you better than me." "No," I said. "Being quiet helped me hear you." I walked past her, unlocked my door, and stepped inside. My hands shook only after I turned the deadbolt. Then I wrote down every word I remembered. The next weeks became an education in systems. Probate court, trust law, bank compliance, notary logs, medical capacity, fiduciary duty, civil discovery. I had taught branches of government for years, but I had never felt the machinery of law move around my own life. Marisol filed a notice with the probate court, stating that a later will had been discovered. She requested emergency relief to prevent sale of the house or removal of estate property. She also sent a preservation letter to Claire and Russell Vance, instructing them not to destroy records, emails, texts, financial documents, or estate property. Claire responded through Russell. His letter arrived on thick paper. It was polite, elegant, and cold. He wrote that my allegations were unfortunate, that my mother's capacity had been diminished, that the alleged will was suspiciously discovered by the person who benefited most, and that Claire had acted only out of love and administrative necessity. Alleged will. Suspiciously discovered. Administrative necessity. In the margins of my copy, I wrote what I taught my students during primary source analysis. Word choice reveals motive. Marisol hired a forensic accountant named Dennis Cho. He was a small man with tired eyes and a voice like dry paper. He requested bank records, trust statements, check images, wire authorizations, and communications between Claire, Russell, and Evergreen. At first, Evergreen resisted. Then Marisol sent them a copy of the will, my mother's letter, and the revocation of power of attorney. The records began arriving. Boxes of them. I spent evenings at Marisol's office, sitting at a conference table under fluorescent lights, sorting copies into piles, while Dennis entered numbers into spreadsheets. It reminded me of grading research projects, except the thesis was betrayal, and the footnotes were bank transfers. Patterns emerged. The unauthorized withdrawals began 4 years before Mum died, shortly after she had a mild stroke. Claire had obtained a temporary power of attorney to help with bills. That part was legal. The problem was that after Mum recovered and revoked it, transactions continued. Some requests were signed by Mum. Some were not. Some were approved by Evergreen after letters from Russell Vance stated that Claire remained authorized to assist with family financial matters. One transfer paid off a loan connected to Claire's development company. Another went to a consulting firm that, according to state business records, had been formed by Claire's husband. A third moved into an escrow account controlled by Russell's firm. When Dennis showed me the chart, I felt the same sorrow I felt when a student I trusted plagiarized an essay. Not anger first, sorrow. The disappointment of seeing the work they did to avoid honesty. How much? I asked. Dennis removed his glasses. Based on current records, questionable transfers total approximately $384,000, possibly more. The number did not feel real. I thought of Mum hesitating over the price of strawberries. I thought of Claire's hand lifting the velvet pouch. Then Marisol slid another document toward me. It was an email from Claire to Russell sent 11 months before Mum died. Subject line, revised estate plan. Claire wrote, "She is wavering again. If Nora gets involved, she'll make this emotional. We need a clean version before the holidays." Russell replied, "Understood. Capacity memo will help. Keep communications verbal where possible." I read the sentence twice. Keep communications verbal where possible. That was when I understood. My mother had not been paranoid. She had been taking notes because they had stopped leaving tracks. The pressure increased after that. Claire called my school. Not my cell. My school. The secretary left a pink message slip in my mailbox between a copier repair notice and a field trip form. "Your sister called. Family emergency. Please call back." My stomach tightened when I saw it. There was no family emergency. There was only pressure in a new location. That afternoon, my principal asked if everything was all right. His voice was kind, but I could feel my private life approaching my professional one like a storm cloud. I told him there was an estate dispute and that my attorney was handling it. He nodded, but I saw concern in his eyes. 2 days later, an anonymous complaint was sent to the district, claiming I had used school time to handle personal legal matters. It was vague, but damaging enough that I had to meet with HR. I brought documentation. Attendance records, lesson plans, email timestamps, copies of my legal appointments scheduled outside school hours. The HR director looked almost apologetic by the end. "You're very organized," she said. "I teach history," I replied. "Chronology matters." Still, I cried in my car afterward, not because the complaint had worked, because Claire knew what my work meant to me. She knew my classroom was the one place I felt useful, while everything else was breaking. That night, Russell Vance called and left a voicemail. His voice was smooth, almost paternal. "Nora, this is Russell. I'm hoping we can reduce the temperature here. These situations can become unpleasant quickly, and I'd hate to see your mother's memory dragged through unnecessary proceedings. Claire is prepared to discuss a generous private resolution, but only if we can avoid further accusations. Think carefully about what peace is worth." I saved the voicemail. Then I sent it to Marisol. Her reply came within minutes. "Do not respond. This helps us." The next morning, a courier delivered a settlement proposal. Claire would allow me to keep Mum's recipe box, quilt, and selected sentimental items. The house would be sold. The trust, which the letter described as disputed and partially depleted for legitimate family support, would be divided with Claire receiving 70% due to years of caregiving and administrative burden. I laughed then. A short, sharp laugh alone in my kitchen. Caregiving. I had sat beside Mum's hospital bed grading essays while Claire took calls in the hallway. Administrative burden. She had stolen with stationery. Marisol was not amused when I brought her the letter. "This is not a settlement offer," she said. "It's a confession wearing perfume." The point of no return came from a notary book. One of the disputed documents had been notarized by a woman named Patricia Lyle, who worked part-time at Russell's office. Marisol subpoenaed her notary journal. Russell objected. The court ordered production. When the journal arrived, the entry for my mother's supposed signature was wrong. The date matched, the document type matched, but the identification column listed an Ohio driver's license number that did not belong to my mother. It belonged to Claire. Marisol read it silently. Then she looked at Dennis. Dennis looked at me. No one spoke for a moment. In teaching, there is a difference between suspicion and proof. Suspicion is when a student's essay sounds too polished. Proof is when the same paragraph appears on 3 websites. This was proof. The forensic examiner later confirmed that the signature on the contested power of attorney was likely not my mother's. The pressure patterns were wrong. The letter formation was inconsistent. The tremor did not match her medical records. It was a careful imitation by someone who had seen her signature many times. Claire had not simply influenced Mum. Someone had forged her, and Russell Vance had used that document to justify access. When Marisol explained what that meant, her voice remained professional, but I could hear the steel underneath. "We amend the complaint," she said. "Fraud, conversion, breach of fiduciary duty, civil conspiracy. We notify the disciplinary authority regarding Russell. And depending on what the prosecutor does, criminal exposure is possible." I looked at the file boxes lining her office wall. "So there's no quiet way back." Marisol softened. "There was never a quiet way back. There was only a quiet way to be erased." That sentence stayed with me longer than any threat, because it named what had been happening for years, not just to me, but to my mother. Her wishes, her records, her mind, her authority over her own life. They had tried to make her look confused, so her clarity could be ignored. I thought of every student who had ever told me, "No one believes me." I believed my mother now. The confrontation happened on a Sunday afternoon. I was pruning the dead stems from the mums on my porch when Claire pulled up. She was alone this time. No coffee, no smile. "You won't answer me," she said. "I answer through my attorney. That's cowardly." I clipped a brown stem and placed it in the paper bag beside me. "No," I said. "It's wise." She climbed the steps. "You have no idea what Mum put me through." I looked at her then. For the first time, she seemed tired. Not frightened exactly, but strained, as if holding her face in its usual shape had become work. "She was stubborn," Claire said. "She didn't understand money. She let everything sit there while we struggled." "Who is we?" "My family, my business. Do you know what it's like to build something? To have payroll, investors, obligations?" "No. Exactly. You had your safe little teacher life. Summers off, a pension waiting. You could afford to be noble." There it was. The story she had told herself. I stood slowly. "Mum's money was not your business plan." Her mouth tightened. "She would have helped me if Nora hadn't poisoned her. I didn't know about the trust. She talked about you constantly." Claire's voice sharpened. "Nora is steady. Nora is kind. Nora listens. Do you know what it's like to be the daughter who gets measured against a saint who never has to make hard choices?" I felt sadness then, unexpected and heavy. "I was not a saint," I said. "I was present." She flinched. Then her voice lowered. "If this goes forward, it will destroy all of us. Russell won't go down alone. He'll say Mum was unstable. He'll say you manipulated her. He'll make every private thing public, her hospital records, her confusion, her fear. Is that what you want?" "No," Then settle. I held the pruning shears at my side, not like a weapon, just an object grounding me. What I want, I said, is for Mum's wishes to be honoured, and for the money taken from her to be returned. Claire gave a humorless smile. You think justice is clean because you teach it from textbooks. No, I said. I teach that justice is unfinished work. Her eyes glistened, but she did not cry. You'll regret this. I already regret trusting you. She turned and walked down the steps. At her car, she looked back once. For what it's worth, she said. Mum did promise me the bracelet. Then she drove away. I sat on the porch after she left, the paper bag of dead flowers beside me, the autumn air cooling around my hands. I did not feel victorious. I felt the way a classroom feels, after a difficult truth is finally spoken. Quiet, messy, necessary. The legal climax did not happen in one dramatic courtroom moment. Real life rarely respects the shape of television. It unfolded through depositions, motions, hearings, subpoenas, and rooms where people drank bad coffee while pretending not to be afraid. Claire's deposition took place in a conference room on the 6th floor of a downtown building. I sat beside Marisol, hands folded, a bottle of water in front of me that I never opened. Claire sat across from us, with Russell Vance no longer beside her. By then, he had hired his own attorney. That detail told me plenty. Claire's new lawyer was a woman named Denise Palmer, sharp and unsentimental. She objected often, but not recklessly. She knew the ground under her client was weak. Marisol began gently. Ms. Whitaker, did your mother grant you power of attorney in 2020? Yes. For what purpose? To help with bills after her stroke. Did she later revoke that power of attorney? I don't recall. Marisol slid a document forward. Does this refresh your recollection? Claire glanced at it. It appears she signed something. Something revoking your authority. If that's what it says. Marisol's voice remained even. After this revocation, did you continue to communicate with Evergreen Fiduciary Services about your mother's trust? I helped my mother. That was not my question. Denise objected to form. Marisol rephrased. Did you communicate with Evergreen after your authority was revoked? Claire swallowed. Yes. Did you inform Evergreen that your authority had been revoked? No. Why not? I didn't think it was relevant. Marisol let the silence sit. Good teachers know silence can do more than speech. Students rush to fill it. Adults do too. Claire added, Mum still wanted my help. Marisol slid another document forward. Is this an email you sent to Russell Vance on November 3, 2024? Claire looked at it. Yes. Please read the highlighted sentence. Claire's jaw moved slightly. Denise said, You can read it silently. Marisol smiled politely. For the record, I'm asking the witness to read the sentence aloud. Claire looked down. She is wavering again. If Nora gets involved, she'll make this emotional. We need a clean version before the holidays. The court reporter's keys clicked. The sound was small and devastating. Marisol asked, Who is she? My mother. What was she wavering about? I don't remember. What clean version did you need? I don't remember. Did you discuss changing your mother's estate documents with Mr. Vance? I may have. Did your mother ask you to do that? She had expressed concerns. About what? Claire looked at me then. Denise said, Answer the question. Claire looked back at Marisol. About fairness. Marisol nodded as if that were a reasonable answer. Then she opened the notary journal. Ms. Whitaker, do you recognize this driver's license number? Claire's face lost colour. I'm not sure. It is yours, correct? I don't know my license number by memory. Marisol handed her a copy of her license obtained through discovery. Does this refresh your memory? Denise leaned toward Claire and whispered. Claire's hands tightened. Yes, Claire said. Marisol placed the two documents side by side. So your driver's license number appears in the notary journal entry for a document allegedly signed by your mother. Can you explain that? For the first time, Claire had no prepared answer. I don't know, she said. The words sounded small. Marisol did not raise her voice. She did not accuse. She simply built the room brick by brick, until Claire had nowhere comfortable to stand. Then came Russell's deposition. He was polished, silver-haired, and calm in the way some men become calm after years of being believed. He wore a navy suit and a watch that probably cost more than my car. When he entered, he nodded to me as if we were acquaintances at a charity luncheon. "Nora," he said. I did not answer. Under questioning, he described himself as a long-time advisor to my mother. Marisol asked, "How many times did you meet with Evelyn Hale alone in the 2 years before her death?" Russell paused. "I'd have to check my calendar." "We have your calendar." She slid it forward. He looked at it. "It appears most meetings included Claire." "Most?" "Yes." "How many meetings with Evelyn alone?" He did not answer immediately. "One." "And at that one meeting, did Evelyn express concerns about Claire?" "I don't recall." Marisol produced my mother's handwritten notes from the Russell folder. In those notes, Mum had written, "RV says Claire only wants what is fair. Said Nora would not understand money." I felt cornered. Marisol asked, "Do you deny making those statements?" Russell's attorney objected. Russell said, "Evelyn often misunderstood complex legal discussions." There it was, the old strategy: make the woman small, make her confused, make her records emotional instead of evidentiary. But my mother had done her homework. Marisol introduced an audio file from the flash drive in the safe deposit box. The court had already ruled it admissible for the purposes of the civil proceeding because Ohio's recording law permitted one-party consent, and my mother was a party to the conversation. I had not heard it before that day. Marisol warned me quietly, "This may be difficult." The audio played through a small speaker. My mother's voice filled the room. Thin, tired, but clear. "I do not want to remove Nora." Then Russell's voice. "No one is removing her, Evelyn. We're simply making the structure more practical. Claire has the financial sophistication to manage things. Nora is a school teacher. These matters could overwhelm her." Claire's voice followed, softer. "Mum, we're trying to protect everyone." My mother said, "It feels like you're trying to protect the money from me." No one moved. On the recording there was a pause. Then Russell said, "That's an unfortunate way to phrase it." My mother replied, "It is an accurate way to phrase it." I closed my eyes. There she was, not confused, not wavering. My mother. The truth has a weight of its own. In that room it settled on everyone. After the depositions, everything changed. Evergreen Fiduciary Services, facing its own exposure, cooperated fully. Their internal review showed that warnings had been ignored because Russell Vance's letters carried professional weight and because Claire presented herself as the involved daughter managing a difficult parent. A probate judge validated the will I found in the jewelry box. The court froze the remaining trust assets. Claire's access was cut off. Russell Vance resigned from his firm before disciplinary proceedings became public, but resignation did not erase records. The state bar opened an investigation. The prosecutor's office reviewed the forged power of attorney and related transfers. The civil case settled before trial, but not quietly. Claire agreed to return funds traced to her business and her husband's consulting company. Her share of any estate distribution was waived. The jewelry had to be inventoried and appraised. Some pieces were returned to me, not because I wanted them all, but because they belonged first to the truth, before they belonged to either daughter. Russell's malpractice carrier contributed to the settlement. Evergreen paid an additional amount for failing to verify authority after revocation. No one handed me a giant check in a courtroom. There was no applause. There were signatures, sealed envelopes, tax forms, and a judge who looked at me over her glasses and said, "Ms. Hale, your mother took unusual care to preserve her intent. I am sorry it required this much effort to honor it." I nodded because I could not speak. Claire did not go to prison immediately. Real justice moves slower than pain wants it to. But charges were filed related to forgery and financial exploitation. Her real estate license came under review. Her reputation, the thing she had guarded more carefully than love, began to fracture. The last time I saw her during the proceedings, she stood outside the courthouse beside a marble column, smaller somehow without the performance of control. "Nora," she said. I stopped. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "Did Mum hate me?" The question surprised me. "No," I said. "That was the problem. She loved you longer than it was safe to trust you." Claire looked away. I wanted her to apologize. I wanted some clean sentence I could file away as closure. It did not come. Instead, she said, "You got what you wanted." I shook my head. No, I got what she left. I walked away before anger could make me say more. In the months after, I learned that peace does not arrive all at once. It comes in ordinary repairs. I kept Mum's house for a while. I could not sell it immediately. Every room held both comfort and evidence. The bedroom where Claire took the jewelry, the kitchen where the mail basket disappeared, the hallway where Mum's cane had leaned against the wall. With Marisol's guidance, I used part of the trust to repair the roof, replace the old furnace, and restore the garden Mum had stopped tending when she became ill. I planted lilacs along the back fence. The first spring they bloomed, I stood in the yard and cried so hard I had to sit on the back steps. Not from sadness exactly, from release. I did not quit teaching. People assumed I would after the settlement. Some imagined that money automatically creates a better life, but my classroom had saved me in ways a bank account never could. I returned to my students, to primary sources and essay drafts, to the daily miracle of young people learning that history is not dead. It is choices, records, silence, courage, and consequences. I did take 1 semester of unpaid leave the following year. I traveled modestly, not Paris in luxury hotels, not beaches with white cabanas. I drove through small towns my mother had once mentioned wanting to see. I visited a quilt museum in Kentucky, a historic settlement in Indiana, and the little church where my grandparents married. I brought Mum's photograph with me, the one from the safe deposit box, her standing beside the lilacs. At home, I made changes slowly. I sold my duplex and moved into Mum's house after it no longer felt like a crime scene of memory. I painted the kitchen a soft green. I turned the spare bedroom into a reading room. I kept the walnut jewelry box on a shelf, still empty except for my mother's letter and the small brass key. Sometimes people ask whether I forgave Claire. I do not have a simple answer. Forgiveness is not a light switch. It is not pretending the wound was smaller than it was. I stopped rehearsing arguments with her in my head. I stopped needing her to understand what she had done before I could have peace. Maybe that is a kind of forgiveness. Maybe it is just survival becoming graceful. I used part of the recovered money to create a scholarship at my school for students who had lost a parent or guardian. Not a large, flashy foundation, just a quiet fund that pays for application fees, books, community college deposits, work uniforms, bus passes, practical things. The kind of help that does not make noise but changes a day. The first recipient was a girl named Maya who wrote in her essay, "I learned that being responsible too young makes you tired, but it also makes you observant." I had to put the paper down for a while after reading that. Observant. My mother had been observant. So had I. That was what saved what Claire tried to take. Not suspicion alone, not anger, not revenge. Observation, patience, records, and the refusal to let politeness bury the truth. When I think back to that night at my kitchen table, the rain on the window, the old jewelry box open under my hands, I realize the hidden will was not only a legal document, it was my mother's last lesson. She taught me that love without boundaries can become a door for harm. She taught me that calm people can still be dangerous. She taught me that a woman does not have to shout to defend herself, and she taught me that the truth, if protected carefully enough, can outlive the people who tried to silence it. I never became rich in the way people imagine. I became safe. I became steady. I became free. The jewelry box is still mostly empty. Sometimes sunlight catches the cracked brass lock, and for a moment it shines like something far more valuable than gold. It reminds me that what looks empty may be holding the one thing that changes everything. So tell me, dear listeners, what would you have done if you found that hidden will after your own family tried to erase it? Would you have confronted your sister right away, or would you have stayed quiet and gathered proof? Let me know in the comments, and if this story stayed with you, Please like, share, and subscribe. Somewhere out there, someone may need the reminder that being calm is not the same as being weak.